All right, to get our heads around one of the most fundamental ideas in insurance, we're not going to start with a textbook. No, instead, we're going to take a little trip to the mythical land of Aurelia, where a guild of protectors offered something everyone needed: shields for the villagers. So a new season rolls around, and the guild opens its gates. Villagers are coming from all over the place looking for protection, but right away, the guild runs into a pretty serious problem. You see, the problem wasn't a lack of customers. Not at all. It was the sheer variety of them. I mean, a farmer living peacefully in the fields faces totally different dangers than a villager whose backyard is basically a dragon's front porch. How could the guild possibly treat them all the same? Inside the guild's council, you've got the planner. This is the voice of reason, right? And they're the first to point out the obvious. Giving a standard shield to someone who might have to deal with dragon fire, well, that's just a recipe for disaster. But of course, you've always got the risk taker in the room. They immediately push back, saying, hey, Aurelia is a competitive place. If we get too picky, all those villagers are just going to walk down the road to our rivals. We need customers to stay in business. And then there's the trickster, who comes in with this, let's call it a creative solution. Just hand out shields to everyone and, cross your fingers and hope for the best. A super fast way to run out of shields for everybody. Finally, the wise gatekeeper steps in and cuts through all the noise with the real solution. The key isn't to just blindly accept everyone or to turn most people away. The answer is to build a fair system of assessment. And that one idea was about to change everything. So with that guidance, the guild's whole approach shifted. They weren't just shield sellers anymore. They became masters in the art of assessment. They developed a whole process, almost like a ritual, to figure out the real risk each villager was bringing to the table. And their process, it was actually super practical, totally fact-based. They'd check a villager's health to see if they could even handle a shield properly. They'd look at their location. Are they living on a dragonfire path? And they'd ask about their history. Have they gone through a bunch of shields before? This wasn't about judging people. It was purely about gathering the facts. And that whole ritual, that careful, structured way of looking at risk, yep, you guessed it. In our world, that's exactly what we call the underwriting process. It's the gatekeeper for the entire insurance industry. Okay, so this has been a fun story about dragons and shields, but it's really a perfect stand-in for how insurance works. Let's start translating these ideas from the world of Aurelia into our own terms. Think of this as our little Rosetta Stone, our key for translating Aurelia speak into insurance speak. The villagers, they're the policyholders. The shield tests, that's the underwriting process. Strong versus weak villagers represent different risk profiles. And this curse farmer, he represents a whole new problem we're about to get into, something called anti-selection. So let's put a formal definition on it. Underwriting is basically the whole process of checking out an applicant's risk, and based on what they find, an insurer decides what to do: accept them, reject them, or maybe adjust the terms, like charging a higher price. It's all about creating a fair and sustainable balance for everyone who's part of that risk pool. But just when the guild thought they had their system all figured out, well, a new kind of challenge walked right through the gates, one that was going to test the limits of their whole assessment ritual. So this farmer, he's clever. He knows all about the guild's health check, so he puts on a show. He looks strong on the outside, but he's hiding something really important: a secret weakness, a curse that makes him fragile. He knew if the guild found out, he'd either be charged more or maybe even turned away. And what happens? The very first time he actually needs that shield to protect him, boom, it completely shatters. Not because the shield was bad, but because the guild took on a loss that they had no idea was coming. What we just saw is a textbook example of something called anti-selection, or you might also hear it called adverse selection. It's what happens when an applicant knows a lot more about their own risk than the insurer does, and they use that hidden info to their advantage. It completely undermines the fairness of the whole system. Now, the guild could have just gotten angry, but instead, they got smart. They learned a huge lesson. Their system had to evolve. So they introduced truth oaths, which for us would be like the declarations you sign on an application form. And they started doing regular checks to make sure the information was still accurate. These are the kinds of controls insurers use today to protect everyone in the risk pool. So what's the big takeaway from our trip to Aurelia? It's that underwriting isn't just a simple yes or no. It's this incredibly important and kind of delicate balancing act. And if you remember one thing, make it this. Underwriting is not just about rejection. Its real purpose is fairness. It's about matching the right protection at the right price to the right risk. This is what protects the insurer's ability to actually pay claims, and it stops honest policyholders from having to pay for the undisclosed risks of others. So why does all this matter so much? Well, because underwriting is basically the engine that makes the entire insurance system work. It keeps the risk pool balanced, it fights against anti-selection, it promotes fairness, and it makes sure an insurer has the money to pay claims down the road, which you can bet is something regulators watch very, very closely. So let's wrap this up with our quick check. The lie from that cursed farmer? It wasn't just about one broken shield, was it? No, it was an act of anti-selection that threatened the fairness and stability of the entire system. Underwriting is the art of preventing that exact problem, making sure the shield is strong enough for the entire village, not just one person.